Hi, in this video we will extract Pokemon attack points from a JSON string using Java. This could be useful, for example, if we wanted to do statistical calculations on the numbers. The JSON has extra spaces, fields may be in a random order, and in some records there is no attack field at all. We will implement 4 different approaches and see what's the difference in the required upfront knowledge, the size of the code, and the readability. First, if the JSON is simple, such as it has no recursive structure or repetition of field names, we can use the built-in regular expression matcher. Let's add the verification code, which is a simple print statement calling a regex function, which we will implement. System.out.println and just as simply regex plus. And this is our to be written new function to which we pass the JSON string. And now we are ready to add the code. This is going to be a new static function that returns a list of integers, the attack point numbers. And I call this function regex, and it gets a JSON string parameter. Of course, I will have to import the list for this. And so now we are ready to go. First of all, if we want to use regular expressions in Java, we will need to use the pattern class, pattern.compile. And now this is where the upfront knowledge is required for this approach. We will need to be able to build a regular expression that can extract the attack points. We will need numbers, decimal numbers, which is //d, and define the number of repetitions of this. And we also want to be able to extract this, so we add a matching group. But this in itself will not be sufficient because there are multiple numbers here. We want to be specific. We want to get the attack numbers. So those will begin with the attack field name. And between the colon and the number itself, there might be an arbitrary amount of spaces. And this is our regular expression. We can get the matcher for our input JSON from this expression, and this is going to be our matcher. We can go through this matcher with a simple loop. While matcher has more results, we can extract the attack numbers, and that will be matcher.group1. There's just one matching group, so we just have to use that constant. But as you can see here, it has a type of string and we want to get integers, so we will need to parse this to an integer. Now it is an int. Fine, but this is just one and we need a list of it, so we will need to create a list in which we can return the attack numbers. And for that I will use an array list to make it simple and clean. And instead of storing the extracted attack point in a variable, we add it with the add method to the attacks list. And once this is done, all we need is to return the attacks list, and we are ready to run our code and see the results. And here we go. There are 5 numbers, as we can see here. There's 5 attack fields and all the numbers in the right order. Of course, here record number 5 doesn't have an attack field. This is why we only get 5 numbers. If we have more complicated JSON, we need a proper JSON parsing library, which the JDK does not come with. There are many libraries out there. I will use Google's take on this, which is called Gson. It has 3 ways of parsing a JSON: a stream-based approach, which we will skip in this video, a type-based where you specify a class, and a path traversal-based approach. Let's start with the type-based approach. That's going to be Gson Type, and I will call the method similar to that and just pass in the JSON object itself. Now we can build the stub for this method. It has the same exact signature as the regex function, and we are ready to start typing. Now, since we are going to use types, we will need one. A type in Java is a class, so this really translates to needing to create a class. And I will call this class attack point. And the name of the class is not important. The type and the name of the fields are important. If we do it like this, the default value when there is no attack field on the object that is being parsed will be 0. So to avoid that kind of a problem, I will use an integer object which can be null. Now we have the type, we are ready to do the JSON call. We'll have to create a JSON object for that and use the from JSON method, which just gets the JSON string and the type or a class. So what is this type or class? We have a class, but we would like to get back a list of attack points and we cannot do that without a type because it's a generic class. Due to how Java works with types, it cannot parse it based on passing this class itself. So we'll have to have a type, and the type is going to be an instance of a type token class, which is a generic class. The generic parameter will be the type that we would like to get back from the parser, and we actually subclass this class and get the type field out of it. And this is what is meant by the type override of this function, and now it will return the attack points properly. At this point we are ready to return the attack points, but of course we will have to extract them first. I will use Java streams for this. With the mapping function, there is the attack point class, and we extract the attack field from that and just collect that into a list. Now if we run this code, we will see that there is a null. This is the object in the JSON list that does not have the attack field. So in order to get rid of that extra null, we have to do a filtering, for which we use object non-null. And now when we run the code, we can see there's the 5 numbers in the same order as we got with the regex version. The next way of doing this parsing is using a Gson Traversal based approach. And that's also using Gson, but it's a completely different way of doing it. So it's the same signature as always, and the traversal getting the same JSON string parameter. In this case, we will use Gson's JSON parser class and parse this JSON string with that. This method returns a JSON element. Our JSON element is an array, so we can get the object as a JSON array, and with an array we can do an iteration. So our element is going to come from iterating through this JSON array. This is a traversal, so now we are within the object that is in the list. We will have to get this object as a JSON object, and of that object get the attack field. This is what I mean by the traversal. So this returns the attack field, and we store that in a variable, and we will need to process this variable. It may be null, so we only want to do anything with it if this is not null, and in that case we can get the value as an int. Now of course we would like to collect all of these and return them, and so for that I will use an array list as I used before. And put the value into this list. And once we are finished with the loop, we can just return this list. And now we are ready to run the code. And here we go, same exact list with a completely different approach. So this was our third approach. And the fourth one is the surprise. It is called Json-path. And Json-path is allowing us to traverse a JSON document just by specifying a path. So for this one, we won't even need a method. It will be just a single call for Json-path. We are reading from the JSON object, and now we have to specify what we are going to read. We are starting from the root element, and we are going to want to get from each element in this array the attack field's value. This is how the Json-path expression looks like. Now let's run this code and see all the 4 versions of this code with the same exact results. This is it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.